Legislature.com/free.
Another safety alert for Boeing.
We're talking about what they call a limited or jammed rudder on more than 350 737 planes, including the MAX. Now, the rudder, of course, controls the plane's movements. The NTSB alerted the FAA after a February incident with the United Airlines plane landing over at Newark. The plane's rudder pedals became non-responsive. Boeing says it has reminded operators of what to do if flight crews encounter those issues.
ABC News transportation correspondent Gio Benitez. Israel is still warning of a lethal attack on Iran in retaliation for a recent missile attack that as missile attacks intensify between Israel and Lebanon.
Hezbollah continues to fire dozens of rockets on northern Israel. One salvo of 20 rockets on the town of Kiryat Shmona, killing 2 Israeli civilians and wounding several others. That just a day after Hezbollah fired a record 110 rockets on the district of Haifa. The Iranian-backed militia intensifying its attacks over the last week after the Israeli army assassinated dozens of its leaders and launched a ground offensive in southern Lebanon. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Lawyers for Sean Diddy Combs say the music mogul wants to head to trial on sex trafficking charges next spring. He's entered a not guilty plea and is due in court tomorrow. Philanthropist Melinda French Gates will grant $250 million to support women's health. I'm Mike DeBusk.
You can live out your MasterChef dreams when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
I'm Bill Walter, KBNU News. News brought to you by Canyon Landscaping. This traffic note, 600 West, is closed from 1400 North to 1800 North both today and tomorrow. It will not be passable by emergency vehicles for some work that they're doing in that area. A team of Utahns who have spent the past 10 days assisting in recovery and cleanup efforts in Tennessee following Hurricane Helene have now been moved to best assist those expected to be affected by Hurricane Milton. Utah Task Force 1 announced Tuesday that it has been moved to Perry, Georgia, to be in position to quickly move into Florida after Milton moves through. In addition to the move, the Utah team expanded from 45 to 80 members, along with the addition of canines and new equipment, making it officially a Type 1 team. Late last month, Utah Task Force 1 was deployed to Unicoi County in eastern Tennessee after Helene devastated the area. In addition to search and rescue efforts, the team focused on retrieving vehicles from a river near the town of Irwin and removing thick layers of debris. The west coast of Florida is expected to receive a direct hit from Milton, which, as of last report, was a Category 5 storm still out in the Gulf. As of Tuesday evening. Immigrants that arrive in the U.S. can face significant barriers in integrating and rebuilding their lives, but one Utah initiative wants to help qualified individuals reach their greatest potential. 44% of college-educated refugees experience education to occupation mismatch or are unemployed, according to a recent study by the Department of Labor. Natalie Elderi is with the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and says the licensing and re-credentialing process can be a headache for many, but she adds that the State Center for Global Talent and New Americans works to support Utah businesses with talent pipelines from existing work-authorized immigrant communities and also help businesses identify opportunities to recruit talent through employment visas.
We value and recognize that there's a population of immigrants and refugees who live in Utah and have for quite a long time. What we're hoping to do through this work as well is to bridge existing new American populations with economic opportunities that benefit both themselves and their livelihood.
Utah's workforce is getting older, but the state's close to 300,000 immigrants, many of whom are of working age, could be part of the solution. El Deary says the state's new American task force is all about maximizing talent and ensuring more immigrants are able to use their valuable education, skills, and experience. New Americans account for more than 8% of the state's population. One of the biggest obstacles for internationally trained immigrants and refugees is English proficiency. El Deary says while there are many great programs around the state to help with basic English competency, the state could do better to help those looking to re-enter the industry that they were once a part of.
Very cognizant of that being one of the bigger challenges. We hear it both from industry and business, and we hear it from the nonprofit organizations and from individuals themselves. And so we're hoping to be able to offer more resources.
El Deary says that despite the charged political dialogue surrounding immigration, she is hopeful that through the task force's work, Utahns can understand that they share more commonalities than differences with the immigrant community in the Beehive State. I want to congratulate Beverly Dunford, longtime massage therapist, our latest Above and Beyond Salute winner from Firehouse Subs, to say thanks for everything that Bev has done in organizing a carpool for seniors suffering from arthritis and other pains to travel to local hot springs. We gave Bev a $40 gift card to Firehouse Subs. Submit your nominations for the Above and Beyond Salute by visiting KBNUtalk.com. KBNU weather still mostly clear skies tonight, down into the 40s, mostly sunny, and around 80 degrees on Thursday. Get more news at CashValleyDaily.com.
Fall is the perfect time to landscape, and Canyon Landscaping is ready to build or transform your outdoor space. They bring your vision to life with expert care, including installing beautiful planting beds and crafting custom paver patios. They handle your entire project from start to finish, and they have the team to get the design just right. But hurry, spots are filling up fast. Visit CanyonLandscaping.com or call 752-3838 today. Let's make your outdoor space a true extension of your home. Call Canyon Landscaping. Look for the leaf.
Local news and the best talk. News Talk KVNU.
This is Jill Anderson, CEO at CAPSA. At CAPSA, you matter. To survivors of domestic and sexual violence, you matter. CAPSA is here to help you escape the chains of abuse and rebuild a life filled with hope and safety. To the incredible CAPSA staff and volunteers, you matter. Your passion, commitment, and expertise are saving and transforming lives. And to each of our donors, you matter to this work. Your donations directly fund programs that create safety and rebuild lives. Every donation is a bold statement to survivors that you matter. Learn more about CAPSA and how you matter at CAPSA.org.
Utah's at a crossroads. The surging economy of the last decade is not today's reality. Cache Valley is feeling the effects of rising housing costs, stagnant wages, and skyrocketing energy prices. This is not acceptable, and I know we can do better. I'm Jason Thompson, and as a successful business owner, proven job creator, and experienced city mayor, I know what it takes to ensure that Utah is heading in the right direction. But I can't do it alone. I need your vote this November. At electjasonThompson.com, learn how together we can keep Utah heading in the right direction.
Paid for by the committee to elect Jason Thompson.
The Above and Beyond Salute.
Good morning, this is Beverly.
Beverly Dunford, my name is Will Theelwright. Years ago, you helped put together a carpool for many who are suffering from arthritis and other pains to be able to go to different hot springs in the area to get some pain relief.
I started that carpool back in 2011, and we still go.
Well, we've got a $40 gift card for you to Firehouse Subs as a way of just telling you thanks for what you did.
Oh, wow. Wow, thank you.
The Above and Beyond Salute on News Talk KVNU. KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com, and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People, hour one of today's show. I'm Jason Williams. Thank you for tuning in. We have a lot to talk about today. It has been a big day in the news, both nationally and here in Utah. And a lot of it is, I like news cycles like this. Sometimes the news cycle is just one head slammer of a headline after another, and by the end of the day, I'm ready to check out and go read something happy or watch something mindless on Netflix. But this was a day of headlines that made you think, that got you, at least me, as I heard some of these news stories, both on the radio today, but also just scanning things online, keeping up on what people are talking about on various Utah and Cache Valley hashtags on the social media channels. I did a lot of thinking today. So, first up, coming up later on, we're going to talk about what this means and what the reality of the situation is. But big news earlier today, breaking news around 10 a.m. this morning. The legislature confessed, and they have asked for Amendment A to also be voided on the ballot. We'll talk about that in hour two, because there are a lot of things surrounding this. This started with Amendment D and the legislature basically ignoring the state constitution, and then via Senate ballot language written by, this is an exaggeration, written by the Senate President and Speaker of the House, Stuart Adams and Mike Schultz, respectively, themselves. They literally wrote it. It was so dishonest, a judge said that voters wouldn't even know what they were voting yes or no on, based on the language the legislative, quote-unquote, leadership wrote. The secondary part of that lawsuit, which was successful in a lower circuit court and then backed up again by a review of the state Supreme Court, was that the legislature ignored the state constitution on mandates for public knowledge outside of the ballot language itself, which, again, the courts deemed too dishonest for voters to know what they were voting yes or no on. And we're talking a constitutional amendment here. We're not talking about repealing a law. We're not talking about something that could be quickly undone. We're talking about something that was likely permanent, and the legislature fibbed in the ballot language and had to pull that back. The secondary part of that lawsuit was that the legislature also ignored the state constitution when it comes to public notice window on constitutional amendments. They rushed it. It was too close to the election. They should have waited a year or two, but they didn't. They called it an emergency session, changed the law to try and, make it legal. And the court said, nah, the Constitution is very clear and you can't pick and choose which parts of it you're going to heed. So that brought Amendment D down. The courts ruled that Amendment D, though it was too late to not have it appear on the ballot, any votes for or against would be null and void. You can vote against it in anger if you want. I plan to, because Amendment D was, again, the legislature asking us to give up our own power to check their power. Very cynical in a nutshell, if you even extract all of this dishonesty around it from the legislature. And the reason it came about is they were mad that the courts earlier told them no. When the court said, state Supreme Court said, when voters pass a ballot initiative, it's a hard thing to do here in Utah, and that's good. It shouldn't be easy. States that have made it easy, like Oregon, Colorado, they've got a mess on their hands. It's very hard to do here in Utah, and I'm a defender of that. People complain, oh, you've got to collect hundreds of thousands of signatures, and then get everybody to vote for it once it's on the ballot. Good. It shouldn't be easy. Direct democracy is messy because, let's be honest, we all think with our guts. We don't like to admit that, but we get caught up in things, in bandwagons, in things that are popular at a time, and then we look back in a year and think, wow, why were we so excited about that? And I'm not just talking music and movies and books here. I'm talking political things, policy. You can look back on things everyone was up in arms about 4 years ago, and it seems almost silly. And that cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. So a direct democracy, letting people make law themselves based on the mood of the electorate at any given time, and making that easy would be a mess. I like that it's very hard to do here in Utah. I think other states should copy that. But the legislature, after a ballot initiative to create an independent redistricting commission was successful, voters approved it by wide margins in all 29 counties. And the legislature played along. A committee was put together. They did their work. They recommended 3 maps to the legislature, everything voters wanted them to do every 10 years during redistricting. And then the legislature just laughed and ignored them, pulled their own map out from under the couch cushions that they obviously had drawn months earlier, voted on it in a rush, and passed it. It was a cynical and something that just churns public distrust in the process move by the legislature. Power does funny things to the brain. The legislature's ego is out of hand. And they want to take power from the governor. They want to take power from the judiciary. In fact, keep an eye on the legislative session, because I guarantee they're going to have a tantrum over all of this. They're being quiet right now and acting like they respect the judiciary. But in the legislative session, I guarantee there's at least 2, maybe 3 bills. And I could probably predict which lawmakers will put their names on them. And they will be bills to, quote unquote, rein in the judiciary. Because how dare the courts tell the legislature no based on the actual text of the state constitution? It is the weirdest thing I've seen happen in Utah in my lifetime. And the legislature needs to be knocked down a peg or 2 in their own attitude towards their abilities and smarts. That said, today the breaking news was that not only will Amendment D, thanks to the courts, be null and void on your ballot. It'll show on your ballot, but any votes for or against won't be tabulated and counted. But the legislature today confessed. They submitted a brief to the court saying, based on the ruling over Amendment D, we violated the state constitution with Amendment A as well by not notifying the public in a timely fashion. And so to avoid future lawsuits that are very expensive for taxpayers, because remember, we're the ones that have to pay for the legislature to defend themselves in court. To avoid that, they said, look, we know we'd lose in court, and there's a lawsuit churning through right now on Amendment A after the ruling on Amendment D came down the way it did. And we're just admitting right now we're going to lose that lawsuit. To save taxpayers money, we're asking that the lawsuit stop and that you just consider Amendment A null and void as well. So because of legislative overreach, because of their egos getting the best of them, this power trip they've been on for about 8 years now, the legislature had to confess today that they ignored the state constitution and know very well they will lose in court on the second lawsuit as well. This is bad. I mean, it's good that these amendments to the Constitution are going to be tossed, are going to be null and void, that the Constitution won't be amended based on the process behind both Amendment A and Amendment D. There are 2 others that will still appear on your ballot. I've talked about one, just so you know where I'm coming from. This isn't opposition to amending the state constitution. Amendment C, which will still appear on your ballot as well, but will count whether you vote yes or no. Those votes will actually be counted and tabulated in the final election results. Amendment C, it might be unnecessary, it might not, I don't know, but it's a proper use of an amendment. It's a constitutional amendment process. What Amendment C does, to give you an example of a good thing, and keep in mind this one came from the citizens of Utah, not lawmakers. Lawmakers voted whether or not to put it on the ballot, as is their constitutional duty to do, to have that vote. But the original language, the idea for Amendment C came from a group of people that thought it needed to happen. They got a lawmaker to sponsor it, and lawmakers had their vote. It'll appear on your ballot. And Amendment C basically takes statute and puts it in the Constitution. So election law here in Utah right now says that we elect our sheriffs. They aren't appointed. But that's statute, meaning that could change in the future easily. Well, not easily. You'd have to get it through. You'd have to get a majority of the House and the Senate to vote on it during a 45-day regular session. But it's possible that could change. So Amendment C takes that statute that says sheriffs are elected, not appointed, and it writes it into the Constitution, which is much harder to undo. Once a Constitution has been amended, the likelihood of it being changed is about 100 years is the average here in Utah. Until recently. Keep in mind around all of this that lawmakers have asked us to amend the state constitution every 2 years for the last 12. Too much. And every time it's to give themselves more power. And every time we say yes, we gave them the power to call themselves into special session. We gave them the power to spend income tax they take out of your paycheck on things that originally the state constitution didn't intend for it to be spent on. We gave them the power to find their own attorneys when they needed to, even if the attorney general and the governor's office said, no, we're not going to defend that law, it's unconstitutional. The legislature now has the power to go out and hire its own attorneys if they believe everyone else in the world is wrong about one of their bills that passes. We've given them more power every time they've asked, and the courts this time have stepped in. But, man, I'd like to see voters step in and say, absolutely not. We're done amending the Constitution. Take a breath and check your ego. But we'll see. But Amendment C, again, is an example of a more proper use because I don't have a problem with that. Some might find a reason, I guess, to be upset. And sure, it comes from a political, movement that maybe doesn't have a lot behind it. This idea that it comes from this idea that this secret cabal is going to start appointing sheriffs around the nation, and then one day they'll rise up and they'll take over and become the government. And I guess in a sci-fi novel, some dystopian fictional future novel, that probably could happen. But I don't have a problem with taking current statute that says we elect sheriffs and writing it into the Constitution, because that's harder to change than statute. I don't have a problem with that. That's what constitutional amendments are for, and voters get to decide whether they want to do that. But Amendment A and Amendment D came from far different places. They didn't come from citizens. They came from the legislature wanting more power. With Amendment A, it was more power to do what they wanted with your income tax. The income tax they take out of your pockets. Right now, the Constitution says, okay, you're going to collect income tax. You're going to be responsible with that money, and you're going to use it to pay for education in Utah. It's a necessary thing. The Constitution also mandates that they pay for education every year. And because if you don't, well, you don't have much of an economy left, right? So it mandates that. It's their constitutional requirement to pay for an education system in Utah, public education system. And this other provision in the Constitution says that any income tax collected out of your pockets, out of your paychecks, will go towards that. Lawmakers want the power with Amendment A to spend it on whatever they want. So if they want to kick some cans down the road and let a future legislature worry about how to pay for it, they want that option. This nefarious constitutional amendment passed by voters here in Utah after the Great Depression is in their way, and that's what they wanted with Amendment A. It's going down because they ignored the Constitution as far as public notice requirements. But I would hope it would go down because voters looked at it and thought, nah, you have enough power. Well, we'll see. It's been an interesting couple of months. Remember, the first ruling that started all of this came back in July when the state Supreme Court said you can't just ignore voters when they pass a ballot initiative. If voters approve a ballot initiative that got on the ballot legally by collecting a huge number of signatures from 26 of all 29 counties, those are the requirements here in Utah. It usually works out to be a few 100,000 signatures required. If they do that and get a question on the ballot for a ballot initiative, citizen-driven, and then voters approve that, you, as elected officials, can't just pretend that didn't happen. That's what they were mad about. That's what started all of this. And then today, for the legislature to have to admit, which is what they did, that they ignored the state constitution. Lawmakers in this filing today are basically saying to the courts, look, we know we will lose in court because we didn't follow the law. We didn't follow the provisions spelled out clearly in the state constitution. And because of that, we know that this will fail in court, will lose in court. It'll cost taxpayers a lot of money to find that out. So let's just save everybody money and go ahead and null and void Amendment A as well while we're at it. That was filed with the court today. Now, the court has to sign off on this officially. There is no way the court will say no. There's no reason for the court to say no. This is in line with their ruling, the state Supreme Court's ruling. So this is, for all intents and purposes, a done deal at this point. But again, let that sink in. This filing today from the legislature is the legislature acknowledging that they ignored the state constitution to get more power. This goes nowhere good. Things like this never end well. And the legislature, there are two ways that you can tell lawmakers you're unhappy with them. You can fire them in the election, or you can scare them in the election. Those are the two most significant ways. Now, ways that they can get scared if they see a lot of their peers not getting reelected, or if their own race is a lot closer than it's ever been. The problem is we're in the general election now, and because we only have one functional party, no offense, Utah Democrats, but you're not currently a functional party, and same with you, United Utah Party. You have some great candidates. Michelle Quist for Attorney General, a solid candidate. I don't know if she's going to win, but she's a serious candidate, taking it seriously. But overall, the United Utah Party is a joke. The Forward Party, the Yang Gang, I don't even know why anyone's still talking about them. Libertarians, no one likes you. There's one party in this state. I don't blame the Republican Party either. It's not their fault they're successful. It's the fault of all the other parties for not creating a challenge. Pointing at you specifically, Utah Democrats. You get your 30, 40% every election cycle, and that's it. You've never made any gains. You're not making any more races competitive. That is really the only way the legislative ego gets checked, unless voters decide to give a few lawmakers a little scare this November. But I'm telling you, this type of stuff never ends well. And we have a legislature that has a pretty big ego problem. To have to confess in court with this filing that they know they're going to lose because they know they ignored the state constitution on Amendment A and D. Whew. This is ugly. We'll see what happens. I predict a tantrum from the legislature in the legislative session. I think that there will be maybe a few races that are a little closer than they otherwise would have been. We'll see if the legislature, if a message is sent, and if the legislature hears it. But this is really ugly. We'll be back after a look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News brought to you by Logan Extermination. A 40-year-old Wellsville woman has been ordered to return almost $180,000 she stole from a Hiram grocery store. Jolene Ann Hervey was sentenced to 3 years probation after admitting to passing multiple bad checks to Ridley's Family Market. According to court records, Hervey was sentenced September 9th in Logan's 1st District Court. She previously pleaded guilty guilty to 3 counts of issuing a bad check and 1 count of pattern of unlawful activity, amended to third-degree felonies. Also 1 count of issuing a bad check, a Class A misdemeanor. On November 16th, 2022, Cache County Sheriff's deputies received a call from employees at the store. They reported Hervey passed multiple bad checks between September 2021 and November 2022. It was reported to deputies that Hervey passed 393 checks, totaling approximately $178,000. The checks were written from 4 different bank accounts, according to court records. Deputies subpoenaed information from the 4 banks. They all reported the accounts had been opened by Hervey and later closed at the time the checks were written. During Hervey's sentencing, Judge Angela Fonsbeck sentenced the Wellsville woman to serve 36 months probation and pay $173,303 plus interest to the grocery store. Hervey was also ordered to complete shoplifting and personal responsibility courses. Life Flight experienced a hard landing while on medical retrieval, according to a spokesperson from Intermountain Health. The helicopter landed at about 4 a.m. Tuesday in the Uinta Mountains. The helicopter did sustain damage, but no injuries were reported. And a raccoon started a power outage that affected nearly 5,000 customers across Salt Lake. The outage impacted traffic signals in South Salt Lake and Sugar House, according to UDOT. And in case you're wondering if they caught the raccoon, well, it did not survive, causing the power outage, according to Rocky Mountain Power. KVNU weather is brought to you by Cardall's Insulation. If your home was built before 1980, you should consider updating your insulation. Today's insulation is superior to what you'll find in older homes. For a warmer, quieter home this winter, call 755-5012. Becoming mostly clear overnight, low in the 40s and then sunny around 80 degrees on Thursday. Around 79, 80 degrees on Friday. Get more news at CacheValleyDaily.com.
This is a special report from ABC News, Hurricane Milton. I'm Mike Dubusky. Winds have already begun to pick up across the western coast of Florida, where Fort Myers Beach just recorded a 68-mile-per-hour gust. Hurricane Milton is currently a Category 3 storm, with winds topping 120 miles per hour. But ABC News chief meteorologist Ginger Z in Fort Myers says, in addition to wind, this storm's going to bring a lot of water, too.
Just in a couple of hours, we should see landfall, certainly before midnight. And I want to just set the scene of where I am here. We've obviously seen surge start to breach, and this is low tide. Right there, the dock covered at the hotel that we're staying at. Wind-wise, we've been in good shape, and that's why we're so far from the center. I mean, Milton passed at closest 120 miles from us, but it's now northwest and about 50 miles west-southwest of Sarasota.
Tornado warnings also currently in effect across much of the eastern part of the state. This is ABC News.
Hey, radio listeners, before we get you back to the music, let me tell you real quick about what I did that is saving me a lot of money. I got new insulation in my house. That's right. Now, I know you're thinking, boring, but have you seen the reports lately about how better insulation can save a ton of money on your energy bills? I can tell you it made a huge difference in my home. I mean, not only does the temperature stay perfect, but my energy bill is definitely down. Do what I did. Call Cardall's Insulation, 755-5012. That's 755-5012 for Cardall's Insulation.
From ABC News, Wall Street Now, it's another new record for the S&P thanks to technology stocks like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon up 1% each. The Dow added 432 points. The Nasdaq gained 109. The S&P rose 41 points. Cruise ship companies helped buoy markets. Norwegian Cruise Lines steamed 10% higher after analysts at Citi upgraded its stock and said data suggests growth for the cruise industry into 2025 and beyond. Boeing suffered a slump after the plane maker withdrew a contract offer that would have given striking workers 30% raises over 4 years. The Justice Department is considering asking a federal judge to force Google to sell parts of its business in order to eliminate its online search monopoly. Federal Reserve minutes from the September meeting show officials were debating a quarter or half-point rate cut. They went with half. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Roof Rescue is your local roof specialist, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry no matter the weather. Their team of experienced roofers is here to serve you, providing top-quality service at affordable prices. From minor repairs to complete roof replacements, they've got you covered. Remember, your roof is your first line of defense in protecting your family from the elements. So don't wait until the next storm to discover your roof problems. Call Roof Rescue today at 435-999-4268. They're your trusted local roofing experts, here to keep your home safe and dry. Roof Rescue, celebrating 10 years of providing watertight peace of mind.
Even though the weather's grown colder, you still have time to have your fruit trees pruned. Logan Extermination says your trees need to be trimmed back in order to achieve success next year. And this is the first step to a bountiful harvest. However, you could do more bad than good if you don't know what you're doing. Save the headache and call Logan Extermination today and get a jump on tree pruning. Prices will vary depending on your needs. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
Saturday, October 12th, the Cache Valley Media Group has teamed up with Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology to bring you the 2024 USU Homecoming Parade. Come down to Main Street or watch the live stream on CacheValleyDaily.com. The parade kicks off at 10 a.m. sharp. Thanks to our sponsor, Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, helping you hear every moment loud and clear. Don't miss the 2024 USU Homecoming Parade, October 12th at 10 a.m. Be there or watch it live on CacheValleyDaily.com.
The American Festival Chorus and Orchestra is pleased to honor one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, Gustav Holst, in this, the 150th anniversary of his birthday, Saturday, October 19th. The evening will celebrate some of his greatest chorale and orchestral works, including his most famous work, The Planets. Joining the choir and orchestra will be guest conductors, USU Music Fellow Associate Dr. Gias Zadia and USU Master Student Mitchell Kukura. Reserve your tickets today.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Hurricane Milton bearing down on Florida and parts of where Hurricane Milton's path will cross, barring any real unexpected changes to the forecast, are areas that were hit by Helene just 2 weeks ago, roughly. I can't imagine. One of the articles I was reading, they are concerned about debris from Helene. So Hurricane Helene comes along and it causes a lot of damage. It's pretty bad in and of itself. Milton looks a lot worse. And there's a lot of debris. There are piles. You've maybe seen some of the photos and video going around in news stories and online, but piles of rubble, piles of lumber from what used to be a home or a building, piles of cement, piles of dirt, broken glass, all kinds of things. And that's all sitting there. And now here comes Hurricane number 2. That's when it hit me how weird this would be to be in that area, even evacuated. To be, they're concerned that the debris sitting around is going to make things even more dangerous because now you have, loose, broken, sharp, jagged ends of 2x4s that were once in a wall, and now it's just a 5-foot projectile waiting to happen. Just mind blowing, but. I also saw a story about them having to pull two residents of North Carolina out of trees, deceased. A tragic situation all around. 2 stories, though, that caught my eye today in relation to this. The Milton is expected to hit some parts of Florida that were also clipped by Helene, but it is expected to make landfall in Florida in those areas and some new areas tonight. Some good signs here. It is weakened down. It was a Category 5 yesterday out over the Gulf, which is total devastation. Nothing withstands Category 5. You have maybe some rubble and a few skeletons of apartment complexes left at a Category 5. As predicted, it is weakened before it makes landfall, so it's down to a Category 3. That's still a pretty big deal. That's what Helene was. And then also remember, this intensified from a Category 2 to a Category 5 in about 12 hours with the winds of about 180 miles to 200 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. This morning it was down to a Category 4, and this afternoon it's down to a Category 3, and it's expected to kind of hang out there as a Category 3 as it hits land tonight. So parts of Florida, Tampa Bay area, others have been completely evacuated. There's some really creepy, looks like it is out of some sci-fi movie video of streets that are usually packed with tourists around Disney and other popular, beach areas in Tampa, tourist areas in Tampa, but empty. There was one video shows I don't know if it's a flock or a pack. I'm guessing flock since they have feathers, but a flock of flamingos just strolling down what would normally be a really crowded, busy, high-speed thoroughfare, a highway that runs through one of the towns there. So it's just, it's mind-blowing. But two stories caught my eye. The one raises some questions about social media that we really need to figure out where we fall on this stuff, because this isn't something that can or should be regulated. I don't even know how you'd write a law, let alone enforce a law to stop this kind of thing, other than what already exists. But there's this story of, he calls himself Lieutenant Dan. He's a veteran, lives in a sailboat in the bay there in Florida, and he basically said he wasn't leaving. He said, my boat can withstand the wind, and, sailboats can do that. Lieutenant Dan, by the way, is obviously a famous character from a movie played by Gary Sinise in the Forrest Gump movie. But this guy, his real name is Dan, and so here's where the story got problematic. He went viral for this. His nickname is Lieutenant Dan. I haven't seen his real name posted anywhere, full name, but his real name is Dan. And some influencer happened to find him and posted a video on TikTok of talking to Lieutenant Dan about Dan saying he wasn't going to evacuate. He was going to ride the storm out on his sailboat in the bay there in Tampa. Now, officials had come to him many times and said, man, you will not survive this. Your boat won't, you won't. And he didn't care. I found his real name is Joseph Dan Malinowski. But here's where the story got problematic. So, spoiler alert, they've convinced him to leave. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor announced this afternoon that they actually got Lieutenant Dan to leave. He had been evacuated and taken to a hotel. And he had, but in the days leading up to today, where he was rescued by, and I should point out too that he's putting other people at risk. Anyone who chooses to stay is putting search and rescue crews at risk, emergency responders at risk. It's a very selfish thing to do. And I understand that some people don't have a choice, and that's tragic, and we should do more to help those people get out. And Florida, it seems, is doing a good job of that. FEMA and the federal government do a good job of that when there's advance notice. But remember, we get days of advance notice on a hurricane, even less than that on a tornado, none on a wildfire. But we have these systems in place to do this. But if a person refuses to, a lot of times they can't be forced to leave their property. And that's probably the way the law needs to stay written, because the consequences of changing that are kind of scary. But the problem in this situation is that he had help. And this blows me away. But so a video shared by, let's see, what was the TikToker's name? Terrence Concannon. He's got, a few 100,000 followers on TikTok, but his first and second video had almost 200 million views by the end of the day they were posted last week or over the weekend. The video, I'll look at the one yesterday was they checked in on Lieutenant Dan and said, "Hey, how you doing? You still planning on staying on the boat?" I think it's like a 60-second long TikTok video. Now, the influencer is doing this because they make money off of advertising. They've gotten a lot of followers and they have sponsors and all of that. And they try to get any exclusive, noteworthy content like this that you can. But the problem is they were turning this into kind of a viral fun thing. And people started enjoying it. And there was a Lieutenant Dan fan club. No one was saying, well, a lot of people in the comments were, but none of these influencers were saying, instead of filming this guy and hoping to make your own money off of him, none of these influencers were saying, "Hey, can I drive you out? Let me get you out of here. You're going to die when this hurricane hits." We're talking, so the forecast is for 15-foot sea surges. If you're a boat in a bay, and he keeps pointing out in the videos that his boat is tied to the docking pole, and he said, "My boat won't leave this pole." But if the waters rise 15 feet, you're going to be swept far away from that. The winds are going to stop that rope tying you to that pole from doing any good other than capsizing your boat if you leave it tied to the pole. I mean, it's so obvious. You don't even have to be a professional sailor to know why this is a bad idea, why he's not going to survive. But and it's a 20-foot boat, by the way. We're not talking a huge, this is a 20-foot sailboat. It's obvious Lieutenant Dan maybe is struggling. He's a veteran, maybe struggling with some PTSD, some mental health issues. It's not made clear in the videos, but you can tell he's. But you can also tell as he's informed by these influencers, because now there's three of them. Terrence Concannon is the first, then there's two others that swoop in to make their own money off of Lieutenant Dan. And nobody's talking him into leaving in these videos. They're just filming him and kind of laughing it up with him. And then this Lieutenant Dan fan club starts online. And then there's a GoFundMe, which, by the way, has raised about $29,000. $29,000 for Lieutenant Dan to stay. That's messed up, people. And nobody thinks any of this is weird. Really? You're raising money to encourage a person to put their life at risk, put the lives of emergency responders and search and rescue at risk for fun on the internet. I mean, I guess we've done dumber things on the internet, sure. But this just strikes me as bizarre. Thankfully, this afternoon, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor held a news conference saying that because this had become a really big thing in Tampa. Again, 200 million views on the video posted yesterday afternoon by Terrence Concannon asking Lieutenant Dan, "Hey, do you still plan to stay? Have you got food?" And Lieutenant Dan, his nickname, real name Joseph Dan Malinowski, he's loving this attention. And the influencers are loving being able to put attention on him because it's making them money through their sponsors and their advertisers on their TikTok channel and their Instagram account. No one's trying to save this man's life. Once it goes viral, of course, authorities step in and they talk to Lieutenant Dan and explain things. And again, today, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor announced that Dan had agreed to leave his sailboat and they'd put him up in a hotel with the rest of the folks evacuated. Again, the standout for me on this is that these three big influencers, probably making several tens of thousands of dollars in advertising money off of Lieutenant Dan videos over the last 4 days. None of them try to save this man's life. None of them in any of the videos say, you shouldn't stay here. You will die. No, they turn it into a game. Everyone on the internet turns it into a game. And as of this morning, the Concannon had started a GoFundMe for Malinowski. It raised $29,000. Now, in Concannon's defense, he's very kind to Dan. In the videos, he calls him a kind soul. And it's apparent that Terrence Concannon, the influencer behind this originally, has known him before. He's a local. Concannon lives in Tampa too, and he knows Lieutenant Dan. But still, this is so predatory with a man's life. And they're just looking to make a quick buck off of it with their TikTok account and their Instagram account. And this isn't a Gen Z thing. The two other influencers are in their 40s on Instagram. I don't know. Some serious questions raised here about what the social media era, the viral moment, and the age of the influencer has done to our ethical system internally, each one and every one of us. This is not something to cheer. Well, it is now, because they finally talked Lieutenant Dan into leaving. But none of the influencers making money off of him through these videos over the last few days said a peep about saving his life. We'll be back right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Whether you're a farmer working the fields, a homeowner tackling weekend projects, or a contractor building the next big thing, you need a Kubota machine that works as hard as you do. And Cash Equipment is home to all your Kubota equipment service and parts needs. From plowing fields and clearing land to digging trenches and moving material. Come see why Cash Equipment and Kubota are the choice of champions on the farm, at home, and on the job site. Cash Equipment in Hyde Park and online at cashequipment.com.
Intermountain Budge ENT Clinic has an experienced and caring team of physicians and staff to assist you with all of your ear, nose, and throat concerns, including head and neck surgery. Doctors Kaiser and Wilson and their staff at Intermountain Budge ENT Clinic will work together to provide excellent care and support throughout the entire surgery process, from your pre-op visit to your full recovery. And they accept all insurance. For more information about Doctors Kaiser or Wilson, search Budge Clinic ENT or call 435-716-1420. Local care with Intermountain expertise.
With so much financial uncertainty, are you wondering if your retirement savings will last? The market's ups and downs can keep you guessing, especially if you're approaching retirement or considering it. Your Edward Jones financial advisor can help. If you have more questions than answers about what's next, we can work together to help ensure you're prepared for the future. After all, retirement isn't the end of the road, it's a new beginning. Call one of our 11 branch locations in Cache Valley or go to edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Disasters don't wait for a convenient time. When the unexpected strikes, call the trusted team at Blue Sky. Remember, Blue Sky is that same great ARS team you know and trust.
This is Tom with Blue Sky Restoration. When disaster strikes, whether it's a flood, fire, mold damage, or an unforeseen accident, Blue Sky will clean up, repair, and restore your home or business like it was before. No disaster is too big or too small. For all your restoration needs, you can trust our Blue Sky team.
Welcome back to KVN News for the people. We'll talk more about Hurricane Milton and the preparation and ensuing disaster response from Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. This has become a conversation about AM radio for Attorney General of North Carolina, state lawmakers in both North Carolina and Florida, Alabama Attorney General also getting in on this. But it ties in with something that is not hurricane related, which is a debate over a Save AM radio bill, which is kind of a misnomer because AM radio is never going to need to be saved. It's essential. It remains one of the most reliable forms of communication. But technology and I think lack of foresight on the part of auto manufacturers. News came out earlier this year that I think it was Ford first, and there may be others now, but the Ford F-150 wasn't going to have AM radio in it. And it wasn't going to be that easy to find FM. If you've been in a new vehicle, sometimes it's a little buried in the touch screen, how to get to radio in general. This has caused some concern, and there is a push to pass a federal law, a push in Congress and the United States Senate to pass a law requiring AM radio in vehicles in order for people to take advantage of emergency services and disaster response communication. So we'll talk about that a little bit, what the attorney generals of these states had to say. North Carolina, where Hurricane Helene has come and gone, and Florida, with Hurricane Milton bearing down on them immediately, attorney generals of both states had quite a bit to say, and we'll talk about it on the other side of the break at the top of the hour. A listener had a great question here. We'll wrap up on this in hour one. A listener wanted me to clarify, talked about this at the start of the hour. Listeners wanted me to clarify why the legislature asked a court to void Amendment A. If you remember, again, courts themselves voided Amendment D, calling the legislature's ballot language dishonest, and saying that that's a paraphrase on my part. They're actual words that voters wouldn't know what they were voting yes or no on because the language was so misleading, was the word they used. I say dishonest. They tried to lie to us. The legislature themselves today asked the court to also void Amendment A. It will be on the ballot. It's too late to reprint those ballots, but they said void Amendment A too. And a listener wants clarification on why the legislature would ask for that. The short version is the legislature is acknowledging with this request of the courts submitted this morning that they also ignored the state constitution on Amendment A. So that's, their actual words were, look, we know we're going to lose this. It'll save taxpayers money if we don't go through with the lawsuit that is now trickling through the courts on Amendment A after the ruling on Amendment D was successful in stopping that. There was a lawsuit filed on Amendment A. The legislature here admitting we're going to lose that one. But another way to put that is the legislature is admitting they violated the state constitution, because that's what brought Amendment D down. So if you'd like to read more about this, I've linked to some of the coverage of this early this morning from Salt Lake Media. And stick around. We're talking about AM radio and